4chan is an anonymous image board that... You thought this video would have some stupid generic intro like that, huh? Think again. I'm not like other YouTubers. I'm gay. Most of us know what 4chan is already, and if you don't, boo-hoo, little bro, Google's right there. While its legacy may be controversial, there's no denying that at its peak, it was one of the most influential websites out there. So, hi, I'm Crunchybagels, and I talk about weird things on the internet. I was invited on this stage today to tell you all 3 bizarre stories from 4chan's halcyon days, if it ever had such a thing. Are they important milestones whose effects rippled across the entire site? Nothing of the sort. Are they connected thematically to tell a story grander than the sum of their parts? I'm honored you think I'm that clever. Is this the super creepy ARG-SCP-DEI 4chan iceberg that'll knock your socks off and beg you for a foot job? Well, this is the same site that coined the term Rule 34, but no. Why the hell are you up here then? Today's sponsor is boot.dev. Yeah, and she said she's really into Java, and I said I was too, but... I really want to impress her, but I don't even know the first thing about programming.
Don't worry, bro. I have just what you need to get with her.
Stockings and a maid outfit?
What? No, I meant boot.dev.
Whoa. I'm learning JavaScript so quickly. My brain wasn't meant to absorb knowledge this fast. And it's not just JavaScript either. Python, SQL, TypeScript, and more. And only the interactive elements are paywalled? It's completely free to watch and read every course.
Now you're getting it.
Thanks so much. I'm gonna ask her out right now. Console.log, parentheses, what's up, babe, parentheses, semicolon.
What the fuck?
It's Java.
I like coffee. Get that nerd shit away from me. Shoot.
Oh. Well, at least I know JavaScript now. And that's why you should use boot.dev. Scan this QR code now. 25% off your first year on the annual plan. Use code Crunchybagels. 30-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. Go, go, go. This first story is a tale of love and loss. We begin on July 22nd, 2010 on 4chan's VP board. It had been just over a week since VP's inception as a containment board for Pokemon fans. In other words, the board's culture was still in its infancy, and today it was about to be changed forever. It began with a thread. In this thread, a challenge, OP wrote, draw your favorite Pokemon without looking at any kind of reference. People were excited to participate, including this story's protagonist. Sorry it's shit, he wrote. What are you supposed to be? An Anon replied, perplexed. It's a Tentaquil. However, if you were to play every mainline Pokemon game, the most recent being Platinum at the time, you would not find Tentaquil anywhere. If you were to watch every episode of the anime, play every spin-off game, hell, even play every fan game up to that exact moment, it'd show up in none of them. You could scour the entire Pokedex, and though you'd find Tentacool and Cyndaquil, Tentaquil, those are not. Despite our protagonist's confident assertion, Tentaquil was not real. And that's why VP fell in love with it. Why do we have hands? There are many reasons. Pat the Tentaquil, hold the Tentaquil, cherish the Tentaquil, forfeit all mortal possessions to the Tentaquil. Offerings of fan art were heaped upon the creature. Part and parcel with its newly refined design came lore. It's a psychic and bug type with the immunity ability. Its signature move is Puke Blood, an 80 power attack with a chance to flinch. But despite its ugly appearance and sickly signature move, Tentaquil is the coolest, bestest, and most asbestos Pokemon of all time. If you train your Tentaquil all the way to level 99, your reward is the ultimate attack, Splash. It also learns Sketch at level 19, lol, have fun. Soon, 2 ROM hacks were made in honor of Tentaquil, one for Fire Red and one for Emerald. In both, your starter was the Pokerman of the Hour, a much better choice than any of those other gay Pokemon. Its ability in these hacks is Squiggle, which does But that was just the beginning. Conveniently, Pokemon Black and White, the upcoming mainline Pokemon games, were going to release in just 2 months. So, 4chan being 4chan, they decided it was time for a bit of trolling. Anons tried to convince those who didn't know any better that Tentaquil was a legitimate upcoming Pokemon in the new games. One way they did this was by photoshopping Tentaquil into upcoming Gen 5 promotional material. And that's more or less everything you'd learn about Tentaquil from its Know Your Meme page. I can explain. If you winced when you heard that my sources know your meme, you had the correct response. World-renowned, horse race test fandom-renowned internet documentarian Crunchybagels becoming so corrupted as to use know your meme as a source is a real West has fallen moment. But I beseech thee, please hear me out. One of the problems with researching 4chan is that it's transient by design. Threads don't archive on 4chan, so it's up to the community to construct said archives from the ground up. Modern 4chan history is extremely well documented, but the further back you go, the more sketchy things become. Now, look at this image of the Tentaquil thread. Notice anything? First of all, the image is really low quality, and second of all, it's obviously photoshopped. Now, why wouldn't I screenshot the original thread? You're starting to catch my drift. I just can't find it anywhere. And believe me, it's not for a lack of trying. My go-to 4chan archive is Old Friend. It's a search indexed archive of over 11 million 4chan threads from 2003 to 2014. It's convenient, it's great, I love it. However, the lion's share of the posts come from mid-2006 to November 2008, which means the lion does not concern himself with thoroughly covering the 2010s. Sure enough, the first post on Old Friends to contain the word Tentaquil is from August 20th, 2010. Of all the archives I checked, the only things of note are a couple goodies and a pretty illuminating July 25th thread I found on Desu Archive. I'm not naive enough to claim that nothing else useful is archived anywhere. The internet is a big place and people have been trying to archive 4chan for a long time. But if it is out there, let's be realistic here, I'm not gonna be the one to find it. If you do want to join the hunt for Tentaquil, be my guest, but I know your ass didn't read the warning at the beginning of this section. 4chan is a different beast when it comes to illegal or otherwise disturbing content. Old Friend and Desu Archive do have ways to report stuff, but not everything is so filtered. So, yeah. Now you know I know your meme is genuinely, unironically, the most thorough source I have about Tentaquil. But there's no use lingering on the history we've lost. And despite how much I've shit on Know Your Meme in this section, its Tentaquil page is actually pretty nifty. The earliest archive of Tentaquil's Know Your Meme article is from August 7th, 2010, while its first stable version was from August 10th. The fact that its first stable version is less than 20 days after the original thread lends it some much needed credibility in my eyes, as those who wrote it would likely have a firm memory of what took place. Furthermore, the article's image gallery is a treasure trove of media that would have been lost otherwise. For example, this cutie patootie drawing of Tentaquil as an anime girl. And finally, everything I've seen outside of this article has helped me corroborate it. Look, there might not be much archived, but the July 25th thread in particular not only helps prove stuff in the article, but also gives some new deets. Apparently, Tentaquil's base stats are identical to Jirachi's. Fun fact, that Fire Red ROM hack I mentioned earlier is still downloadable to this day. Unfortunately, it seems the Emerald hack is either lost or very buried, with the only surviving video I'm aware of being linked in the article. VP edited a lot of Fire Red's early dialogue with memes and general crassness, although after playing up to Mount Moon, it appears the edits stop around Pewter City. According to the July 25th thread, Puke Blood is supposed to have 15 pp in 4chan lore, but the hack cut it down to 8 because it otherwise be too overpowered. I was even able to find instances of people at least partially convinced Tentaquil was an upcoming new Pokemon, as well as another Photoshop hoax that Know Your Meme didn't have. To this day, Tentaquil is still remembered fondly on TG. 4chaners have continued its legacy in fan games such as Pokemon Clover, or by pumping out even more hoaxes once X and Y rolled around. On May 31st, 2019, the Pokemon Gold and Silver Space World 1997 demos were leaked to the public. Within their their code was the beta design of the Pokemon Politoed. By sheer chance, it looked nearly identical to Tentaquil, much to the delight of VP. This has also doomed Tentaquil to be clickbaited as a spooky Mandela effect on YouTube ad infinitum. However, I think Tentaquil's most impressive cultural impact came on November 13th, 2012, when Scribblenauts Unlimited came out. As an Easter egg, the developers put who else but Tentaquil into the game. It was here that things came full circle for our blood-puking amphibian. Tentaquil, who began as a silly, half-assed fakemon, was now part of a game officially published by Nintendo. Thus wraps up our first story. Well, that was weak. Yeah, I hate Pokemon. I also hate your face. Hey, I thought it was decent. And why is your avatar a girl? Even though you're a guy, is it because you goon to her? No, it's just, what are your pronouns anyway? Yeah, what are your pronouns? Pronouns. Give us your fucking pronouns! Guys, it doesn't matter what Crunchy's pronouns are. Because I have a really original joke about a really specific percentage, and nothing on earth could make me not tell it right now. Shut up! Speak when spoken to! Also, they're he, him. Alright, I get it. You're a tough crowd. Well, just wait till you see this next story. It's so long and so detailed, I nearly made it its own video. Then I realized I had no idea how to market it. So I guess it stays here. Oh, real quick, if you're enjoying this video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I do director's commentaries for all my videos on there, including this one. Trust me, the process for making these things is equally masochistic every single time. So if you're interested, be sure to check it out. The link is in the description. To tell this story properly, we're first gonna have to meet one of the internet's old guards.
You're the man now, dog.
Oh, hi YTM&D. Fancy seeing you here 2 videos in a row. On YTM&D, users share pages known as sites using a combination of images or GIFs, text, and sound bites. Though its content was dead simple, in mid-2006, simple sufficed to create an icon of the early internet. YTM&D also happens to have a community Ventrilo server, an old voice chatting service. While the specifics are unknown, on roughly the night of June 20th or early morning June 21st, some YTM&Ders were bumming about in the Ventrilo server, some YTM&Ders, and some 4chaners. How many 4chaners? According to the YTM&D wiki, several. Anyway, they were in the mood to raid another website. It was proposed that they raid a neo-Nazi forum called resistance.com, but as funny as that would have been, it was rejected. One of them sighed in frustration. "Crap, we're stuck again," he exclaimed. Probably. I mean, I don't know what they actually said. Look, it's dramatic storytelling. Anyway, suddenly a light bulb lit up atop another user's head. I've got it! Live Jasmine! We should raid Live Jasmine! Yes, that's it. Live Jasmine is a pornographic live streaming site where viewers can interact with cam girls through a chat box. In other words, it was ripe for trolling. The early stages of the raid aren't well documented, though according to the YTM&D wiki, they managed to get multiple women to show it off on stream. And by it, I of course mean their keyboards. But eventually, someone came to a delightfully devilish idea. Screw keyboards, what if we got a girl to put a shoe on her head? Dude, you're a fucking genius. Their target was a performer named Sharissa, and thankfully for us, their interactions with her were recorded and uploaded to YouTube. First, Sharissa showed her keyboard. Much obliged, practically a formality by that point. But already, chatters were laying bare their true cravings. Britney Spears, Stalin, and Jesus have historically not agreed on much, and yet all of them yearned for Sharissa to put a shoe on her head. She was clearly overwhelmed by the attention and spent a good minute stunned yet smiling. But eventually, she rose from her armchair, leaned over, and grabbed something off screen.
I got a video. Shoe.
Sharissa sits her pretty butt down again, only to waste time fiddling with the knot on her shirt. Is she teasing? Does she just not get it? The crowd loses it. Fuck the shirt! Put shoe on head! No boobs! Shoe! In seeming understanding, Sharissa points to her head, then ducks down to retrieve her shoe again. Her heels practically glimmer before the camera, like perfectly cut diamonds. Anticipation strains the air. I see the shoe, I see the head, but no shoe on head. Well, not for much longer, intrepid chatter. At 2:08 a.m. on June 21st, user Flying Laser Jesus posted a screen cap of their success to YTMND, with Vengaboy's We Like to Party looping in the background. Positive comments and 5-star ratings poured in, and within 15 minutes, Laser Jesus wrote, "We're trying to get more." At 3:26 a.m., a second shoe site hit YTMND. 3 minutes later, Flying Laser Jesus commented on it. And so it begins. It's here that I need to hammer home an idea about YTMND culture. See, YTMND was heavily influenced by what are known as fads. Basically, YTMND means. A core part of the site's identity was its users' propensity to iterate on the same fad over and over and over again. So when people sensed that shoe-on head was starting to become a fad, well, let's just say half the site jumped on board. At 3:29, someone posted an animated GIF of Sharissa's shoe-on head. By 4:35 a.m., the original YouTube recording I mentioned earlier had been uploaded. From there, the ball really got rolling. Others began posting their own shoe-on head attempts, successful or otherwise. Don't feel like going to live, Jasmine? Just make a really shitty meme about it instead. The Ventrilo stayed active for hours, and hell, after a certain point, I'm sure people completely unaffiliated with the Ventrilo were giving it a swing. And nigh every site was backed with the same Vengaboy song. Come sunrise, it was clear. There was no stopping shoe-on head. It didn't just stop at shoes. People also asked performers to put other objects on their heads, most notably keyboards from earlier in the raid. They got one girl going by Sunny Ray to sing about shoe on head.
Put your shoe on their head, shoe on their head. You are the man now, dog.
It was, of course, then remixed.
Put your shoe on their head, shoe on their head.
This was part of a whole subgenre of women being asked to write or say phrases related to YTMND. And for the record, yes, there were multiple days where all I did for work was look at pictures of half-naked girls with objects on their heads. YouTube has its perks sometimes. At one point that day, YTMND went down entirely for a bit, with the stated reason being, shoe on the server. Incredible. Please someone make a fan art of bagel-chan with a shoe on her head. I'll give you a shout out in the next video, I promise. Seriously, my channel artist Jozu keeps telling me to beg people for more fan art. Do it for him if nothing else. With all the examples I've procured, you might be tempted to say that the live Jasmine girls were practically bending over backwards to put as many shoes on their heads as possible. In reality, it was often the exact opposite. See, live Jasmine models want one thing: privates. I mean people going to private chat with them. Look, it's a mechanic on the site. For a fee, users can go into a completely private stream and chat one-on-one with a performer. Actual nudity is typically locked behind this paywall. One of the primary methods used to obtain shoe on head was for the troll to say they'd go into private if the performer did so. This was almost always a lie. YTMNDers are, by and large, cheapskates. And furthermore, where's the thrill if they're being paid to put a shoe on their head? What's the point? But many performers likely already knew that the shoe beggars were never going to give them any money. Thus, many sites show performers snapping at the trolls in their chat. Hell, many live Jasmine chatters were also getting sick of the trolls. It was genuinely that ubiquitous. Hate for the fad didn't stop at live Jasmine either. Many YTMNDers loathed shoe on head, feeling YTMND was being clogged with unfunny Ventrilo in-joke nonsense. Which brings me to another thing that I think is worth mentioning. On the surface, the whole shoe on head fad seems fairly innocent, right? Annoying for the models, I'm sure, but otherwise harmless. To be clear, this is more or less the case, and I'll freely admit that I find shoe on head fucking hilarious. That being said, it's evident that part of how this fad was able to take off so much was due to a general lack of respect for camgirling as a career. To some people, part of the appeal was that they saw camgirls as a deserving target. For some, it was more implicit in the way they spoke about camgirls in general, but for others, it was kind of open season, especially if the girl was unattractive or overweight. I mean, there's a reason why the term cam was so prevalent. violent. Look, I'm not trying to be the tone police. Lord knows I've joked about way too many tragedies for that to be a viable position. But I don't know, man. That doesn't sit entirely right with me. I feel like that motivation taints an otherwise benign prank. There were also a fair number of white knights who saw themselves fit to try and save these innocent girls from their degenerate career path before it's too late, which is cringe. Live Jasmine and more broadly the webcamming industry aren't above criticism, but this ain't how you do it. It'd also be amiss of me not to mention Sunny Ray, the singing girl from earlier. By 4:33 p.m. on June 21st, she already seemed sick of the attention, with one user screen capping her looking exhausted. The site's audio also demeaned her for apparently not having a job. According to Master Sitsu, who, fun fact, is the guy who uploaded the Shoe on Head YouTube video, people convinced Sunny to scroll YTM&D before eventually trolling her with Tub Girl. This was written on June 22nd. On June 27th, someone else commented, quote, "Dude, we ruined her life. I was just in her room and I was being courteous, and then some stupid fucks from this site showed up and were like, say this and put shit on your head. She told us she hated us all and now she doesn't get any privates because of us. This doesn't feel right anymore." Look, I don't have a problem with Shoe on Head in a vacuum. It's relatively harmless fun. I just couldn't make this video without mentioning these things. Okay, soapbox over. Or I guess it's more like a shoebox. At 8:40 a.m. on June 22nd, YTM&D user Neomatrix released a site titled PSA, Shoes on the Filter. According to Neo, he was curious about Live Jasmine's staff's reaction to the ongoing debacle, so he waltzed up to their support department and asked them about it. However, they replied saying that they had filtered out the word shoe from their chats entirely. It would show up on the end of the person spamming, but the performer and other chatters would have no idea anything was happening. Now, to be clear, I didn't just trust Neomatrix's word on this. I did go through the surprisingly difficult process of double-checking his claim until I was reasonably confident that it was true. But it's all very long and boring, so I'm just gonna dump it in my sources doc in the description down below. To summarize though, the filter most likely started a bit before midnight on the 22nd. To get around this, people continued the trend of telling the girls to put other things on their heads. Some examples include a sex toy, a teacup, a remote, a soccer ball, lipstick, a Coke bottle, a book. You get the point. The raid continued in this fashion for the rest of the day, but on June 23rd, yet another plot twist would befall the raiders. At 5:16 a.m., a post rang out on an obscure forum. They titled it, "Put Something on Your Head." What the hell is going on with all these kids swamping Live Jasmine chat rooms, demanding performers to put something on their heads? They've been doing it for 3 days now and laughing about how they are ruining Live Jasmine. I get the impression some website is doing a contest to see who can get the most ridiculous screenshots. This is perhaps the most serious and annoying problem with non-customers I have seen in the 2 years I've been an affiliate. A moderator named Motor City Kitty, or MCK, replied, "I have not noticed that one. I have not been in the chat much the past few days. It is the performer's responsibility to /kick or /ban idiots. However, they have to be paying attention to do so. I would have to agree that a legit customer might wonder just what the fuck is going on." The obscure forum in question was Adult Webmaster Empire, or for short, AWE. I'll keep the deets a secret for now, but in case it isn't obvious, it's a forum for people in the porn industry. A number of YTM&Ders discovered that this forum was talking about them, so they started spamming it. Needless to say, after having to do it for free, the aforementioned MCK was no longer in such a cordial mood. No later than 2:49 p.m. he wrote, "Final warning. To the shoeheads. Are you children done? This is a business, regardless of what you may think. The performers do this for their livelihood. Unlike you children that probably live in you parents' basement, harassing people working is not funny. Instead of offering the idea as a promotion of some kind first in fun, we might have went along with that you have violated international copyright laws using images of our sites and are at risk of having your server shut down. This is a multi-million-dollar international company. So, as a result of this, you might find yourselves or you parents needing to hire very expensive lawyers. Any images of this company's sites are to be removed from your servers within 24 hours, or we will commence legal actions against the site owners for copyright infringement." Well then. YTMND was no stranger to poorly written legal threats. If you saw my last video, you already know Neil Bauman tried this strat earlier that same year, and summarily became the punching bag of the entire website. The post was screenshotted and put on YTMND. From there, a bunch more sites came out mocking the post for poor grammar, hypocrisy about free speech, and generally just being real dumb. Even Max Goldberg himself, the owner of YTMND, responded to it in a comment. Last I checked, it isn't legal tender to make a cease and desist in the form of a forum post. I can't wait to be sued. If the goal of this post was to get YTMNDers to stop raiding their forum, lol. YTMNDers flocked to AWE in droves. MCK for his part attempted to parry this oncoming invasion by debating or otherwise banning people. He even went as far as doxing the IP addresses of some banned users. This all begs the question: who is MCK? Seriously, who is he if he thinks he can sue YTMND? You might be tempted to think that he's the owner of, or at the very least works for, Live Jasmine. In his lawsuit threat, he outright calls it our site, implying that he had partial ownership. But I was skeptical, so I asked another question. What is AWE? Earlier, I said it was a forum for people in the porn industry, but it's a bit more specific than that. AWE is actually an affiliate program for Live Jasmine and another porn site called JO Yourself. The gist is that people who owned adult websites could refer customers to Live Jasmine using a link with a cookie in it, then earn a percentage off any resulting transactions. The forum then was for people to discuss this program. This is how MCK made his living. He earned commissions from referring people to Live Jasmine. Well, I thought as much anyway, but just to confirm, I did a bit more digging and found MCK's public website as of 2006. It's extremely adult. I'm gonna have to censor a hell of a lot on here, but yeah. No doubts about it, he did not work for Live Jasmine outside of these commissions. In fact, Live Jasmine isn't even the only porn website he was referring people to. Seems strange to call Live Jasmine our website when you're just a forum of people who share affiliate links for them. It's a bit like the ATF calling Stryker their dog just because they shot it. No, I will not stop joking about Ruby Ridge. It's one of my 3 total punchlines. I'm nothing without it. My point is, MCK was never going to sue YTMND. If he tried, literally nothing came of it. Live Jasmine wasn't going to either, and I fucking hate MCK for making me dig all the way to China and back to the backshots he depicts in full glory on his old website just to find all that out. Hey, are you almost done? Yeah, it's been like, what, 20 minutes? I'm falling asleep here. Look, I'm almost done. Isn't this video about 4chan? All you've talked about in this section is YTMND. Yeah, this guy's a fucking liar. Clickbait. Yeah, this guy clickbaited us. No, wait, I can... Clickbait. Clickbait. If you would just clickbait, 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 clickbait. All right, fine. You want to hear about 4chan? I'll tell you a thing or two about 4chan. Remember at the beginning when I said that the Ventrilo server had YTMNDers and 4chaners in it? That might explain why the shoe raids stole 4chan's flow beat for beat and bar for bar. Remember how they asked cam girls to show their keyboards? Turns out that'd been a thing on 4chan since at least September 29th, 2005, going by this post on Old Friend, and probably much longer. The act of raiding cam girls is as old as camgirling itself. Here's someone on AWE complaining about the time eBaum's World apparently did it to them a year prior to YTMND's raids. Speaking of girls putting shoes on their heads, not even that was original. Here's a post from April 16th, 2006, where, via context clues, it appears that someone successfully got a cam girl to put a shoe on her head, though the archive Old Friend pulls from here lacks any images. Here's another shoe on head from May 30th, where one user noted, quote, "This one was practically falling out of her panties." In case it wasn't obvious enough that they're referring to cam girls, other replies then started linking to a site called Asian Babe Cams. See, these shoe-on heads were part of a series of raids which took place on 4chan's B-board around the time on Asian Babe Cams. People would start threads linking to performers on the site, then a bunch of B users would hop into their chats and spam up the place. This is where practices like telling women to show their keyboard and put a shoe on their head come from. Or is it? Because even more confoundingly, shoes and keyboards served a dual role. See, another cultural staple on B is where women start threads sharing lewd images of themselves. It would essentially play out like a striptease via image board. Terrible idea on a site without age verification, by the way. I'm actually glad now that Old Friend doesn't archive images. Anyway, these girls would also take requests from the thread for things they should take a picture of themselves doing. Guess what happens next? This also served the dual role of proving their identity. Because everything's anonymous on 4chan, it would often be up in the air whether the poster was actually the girl in the image, or if they were pulling them from somewhere else on the web as a prank. It's unlikely anyone would randomly have a picture of a girl with her keyboard out or a shoe on her head, so providing them was a pretty surefire way to know she was the real deal. I'm unclear whether the whole nude verification thing started before or after the webcam raids, but either way, both predated YTMND's use. Though it is worth noting that showing keyboards was by far the more popular meme. I was only able to find a small handful of shoe-on heads predating YTMND's raid. Regardless, when YTMND started jacking it to shoes, 4chaners understandably felt their style had been jacked. Hell, just to flex a bit, I can even go as far as telling you which specific 4chaner most likely introduced YTMND to the way of the shoe. The description of the original animated shoe-on head site created by Professor Booty reads, "Also, thanks to Delicious Cake from 4chan for introducing this to YTMND. If it wasn't for you, there'd be no shoes on heads." Sure enough, a YTMND user named Delicious Cake replied to that exact site. They'd made their account just 3 minutes prior to commenting, seemingly corroborating that YTMND wasn't their native site. Okay, but how do we know this Professor Booty is telling the truth? Well, as it turns out, Professor Booty is the one who recorded the YouTube video of the first shoe-on head. That's right, Master Sitsu may have uploaded it, but he isn't the guy talking in the video. Look, there's Sitsu in the chat. No, the guy recording used the nickname Jesus, and that's who Professor Booty claims to be. So if nothing else, Professor Booty was likely there for the original shoe-on head, making his word more valuable. So, it seems Delicious Cake is our guy. In the original voice call over Ventrilo, they were the one who suggested they raid Live Jasmine, or at the very least, the one who suggested they ask the girls to put a shoe on their head. Look, I get it. Figuring out who and from which site the idea to tell a girl to put a shoe on her head really came from is of dubious practicality. I don't think anyone in current day actually cares that YTMND stole 4chan's flow. Well, nobody except me. And not because I'm trying to be the next H-bomber guy or something, although my upload schedule says otherwise. Rather, I just think it's interesting to know where these niche internet trends really came from. Shoe-on head eventually died like every other fad on YTMND, but its impact still remains. I mean, even to this day, people bring it up on 4chan. Now there's an entire YouTube channel called Shoe-on Head, who VTubers really like reacting to for some reason. However silly Shoe-on Head may be, its legacy still lives on. All our head. Boo! You stink! Is this really what you're making instead of horse race tests part 2? Oh no. Yeah, what that guy says! Who gives a shit about 4chan? I just want HRT part 2. HRT part 2! I love HRT! Woo! Can you make another HRT video? HRT, horse race tests. I love horses. Horse race tests. Horse. Oh my god, I hate all of you! You're what would happen if 2016 Digibro and Kikidi had a child with fetal alcohol syndrome. You're the chimera hellspawn of Margaret Lovett and Peter the Dolphin. You're one of Corny's escaped homunculi, and I've got my dictionary ready. FNAF may have invented him, Preg, but your dad took it to new lows. They call him Mr. Hands. You're They are all those things, aren't they? But you're not much better. Go on, what's the third story? Why are you hesitating? I know why. It's a story that was supposed to be its own video, but turned out so bad you completely abandoned it. And what you're about to tell are merely its cannibalized scraps. Ever heard of draw-hoarding? That's not me being demeaning, that's genuinely what 4chaners called it back in the day. The term gained popularity on 4chan, particularly B, around 2006. It describes a practice where the artist, known as the draw-hoarder, draws an original character and posts it to 4chan. Anons in the thread then banter with it, and the draw-hoarder draws the character responding to this banter. Through this bizarre artist-audience interactivity, draw-hoarding became its own art form, distinct from both regular drawing and and regular whore. However, there was one particular draw who was a cut above the rest. He was the architect behind such beloved characters as boxdog, epic fail guy, anon-chan, can of beans, and chain chomp-chan. Given that 4chan is anonymous, nobody knew at the time that these characters were all made by the same person. Their creator would later become known as Weaver. Weaver was an absurdly prolific artist on 4chan back in the day. However, at some point, in Weaver's own words, drawing began to die out. No big deal, Weaver had made non-draw projects before, but he began to miss its unique brand of interactivity. So, on December 18th, 2008, he hatched a scheme, a type of art that resembled drawing superficially, but whose spirit gave it a better chance of surviving in the modern 4chan climate. Weaver wanted to tell an interactive story on 4chan. The premise was simple. Players, in this case anons on 4chan, would play the role of the main character. They'd type out actions for the character to take, then Weaver would pick one or more commands from the pool and draw a panel depicting the consequences. By repeating this over and over again, 4chaners could act out a story in real time. Now, before you go commenting about how you want to shove it up Andrew's hussy, yes, this is inspired by one of the MS Paint adventures, specifically Jailbreak. Hell, Weaver wasn't even the first to do it on 4chan specifically, but Weaver had a vision, damn it, and he was going to see it through. One problem, Weaver piloted the concept on 4chan's experimental board R9K. It went extraordinarily well. If you were one of the guys impersonating Weaver to derail the story, or the troll spamming Legoland pictures. Weaver was on the brink of giving up on the idea entirely, but he decided to give it one last go, this time making 2 adjustments. First, to protect against impersonation, he used a trip code, a feature on 4chan which lets you eschew anonymity in favor of a password-protected username. As you might guess, this is where the name Weaver comes from. Second, he took it to TG, the traditional games board. To say it was better received here would be an understatement. Within just a couple threads, an anon decided it was so good that they archived it on a site known as SupTG. SupTG is unique among 4chan archives in that it demands threads reach a certain threshold of quality to be allowed, and low-quality threads are pruned to free up server space. Every thread on there needs a name. So, the person sending it to SupTG wrote, "I have dubbed it Rubyquest. Is this acceptable?" Needless to say, the name stuck. Rubyquest begins as a typical, if offbeat, puzzle adventure story. Our protagonist is Ruby, a rabbit girl who looks fresh out of MS Paint. She's trapped in some bizarre facility, but with the help of TG, she's able to interact with various objects within it to find an escape. In the second room, she meets Tom, her cat boy's sidekick. Before you ask, yes, everyone in Rubyquest is based on Animal Crossing characters. In fact, a lot of their designs were cannibalized from a parody comic Weaver drew called Crossing Pals. Since this is 4chan and they're playing a female character, they immediately attempt to offer Tom sexual favors. Unfortunately, Weaver doesn't appreciate the bunny pussy grind set. Man, Rubyquest sure seems like fun. Just a cool, dorky adventure. I sure hope nothing bad happens to our cute animal character. Oh wow, who could have seen that coming? As it turns out, Rubyquest wasn't just an interactive puzzle game, it was also a horror story. Even from the beginning, people loved Rubyquest, but once they got to the gory twist, nearly everyone in attendance agreed. It was among the most legendary series of threads they'd ever witnessed. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into the plot of Rubyquest for this section. Not only does it have a ton of moving parts which would take forever to properly explain, but also, you can just read Rubyquest. See, when I first started looking into Rubyquest, considering its premise of a bunch of 4chaners trying to guide a story to its conclusion, I thought it would be total chaos, and probably pretty difficult to understand without someone explaining it. Something like horse race tests. What I got instead was a story that, while interactive, does place stringent limitations on what the audience can do. Sessions of Rubyquest only occurred when Weaver was there to run them, so the lore always developed under his direct guidance. It stands on its own as a coherent piece, and has long been collated into a neat little webcomic that only takes a couple of hours to read. Because of that, going full anime recap channel here seems a bit shit. No, instead I want to focus on the more meta elements of Rubyquest, namely, what happened on 4chan while Rubyquest was running. Turns out, quite a lot. See, there's a common thread between every story I've discussed thus far. Trolling. Tentaquil was used to troll naive people about black and white. Shoe on Head was used to troll cam girls. And Weaver, well, Weaver was a troll like few others. My mother told me once of when, a young hare ventured from her den, and as she danced in field and glen, the world sang joy about her. But wicked hateful things abound, and that young hare these evils found, then whisked her up from off the ground, and Glen was left without her. This opening stanza is from the poem The Metal Glen, written by William Murdoch in the 1800s. When in the 1800s? Dunno. See, there's a problem with this poem. Despite being credited to 19th century Scottish-Canadian poet William Murdoch, the first known record of its existence is in a December 26, 2008 post to TG, specifically a Rubyquest discussion thread. It appears that by this point, 2 sessions in, Rubyquest discussion threads had become a regular fixture of TG. It seemed like this one would be no different from any of the others, but shortly after it began, an anon replied, "Did anyone ever read The Metal Glen by William Murdoch? I have it in an old book of Scottish poetry, and the parallels between Ruby and that poem are unsettlingly strong." TG was curious, so the anon transcribed the poem into the thread. The poem told of a young hare whisked away to a facility known as the Metal Glen. There, she was captured and tied with ropes, along with a bunch of other animals. However, after being inspired by the cat, she chews through her ropes, and in turn helps the cat break free from his chains. The poem leaves it unclear if the hare and cat were able to totally escape from the Metal Glen, nor if they were able to achieve happiness thereafter. TG was fascinated by the poem. Not only did it superficially resemble the story of Rubyquest, but certain lines were uncanny. The bear knotted up himself and died? I mean, that's a bear who's dead, and his insides seem pretty knotted. Oh fuck! After session 3, the similarities grew even stronger. The poem told of a fox who both laughed and denied he'd been caught. The new character Red denied he was caught, and he laughs a lot. It was clear to everyone reading. This poem was somehow connected to Rubyquest, likely serving as its direct inspiration. But what enraptured TG most was that it was just a good poem. People really liked it. The wording, themes, and aesthetic were all downright evocative. But when people tried to look up more about this poem, nothing, nada, zip, zilch, zero. Google had nothing. Sure, William Murdoch is a real Scottish-Canadian poet, but the poem itself? It was almost like it didn't exist at all, save for this singular anon's bookshelf. Who knows though? Maybe it's just obscure. Well, time to spoil the surprise. Though with how much foreshadowing there's been, it could hardly be considered a twist at this point. It was Weaver who wrote it. Give yourself plus 100 internets if you guessed it correctly. Specifically, on January 6th, 2009, at the tail end of Rubyquest's 5th session, Weaver retreated to the now well-established Rubyquest IRC and typed, "Yes, I wrote the Metal Glen." Ha, good one, Weaver. You wouldn't troll us again though, right? Right, Weaver? You wouldn't. If you were drunk, the Ruby discussion thread that appeared on January 3rd would look completely normal to you. Ruby discussion, viable theories, Cthulhu, you're already dead, it was all a dream, wizards, debunked theories, Tom clones, time travel, aliens, reality TV show, Lost. Okay, weird choices for theories, but stranger still was the image tacked on next to it. It depicts the brig cut in half with a giant demonic face amid the inky blackness. Tom, meanwhile, is ready to exercise that demon Freeran style by exercising his Second Amendment rights. At a passing glance, it would appear like OP just reposted a panel from Rubyquest, only none of this actually happened. Like, okay, the brig did get cut in half, but there was never any evil face and Tom never got a gun. And Anon replies, "You forgot birthday prank." Yeah, this panel seems legit. Okay, what is happening? Wait, what? Did I miss a Ruby thread? Someone quotes this and writes, "Nope. No update since last night's adventure." But this came with yet another Opposites Day Ruby image where the wall had morphed into a screaming face! Last night's adventure? What adventure? What's happened? Someone elucidated. Red came back as some kind of force as seen in the OP's image. Things started coming to life, including the walls themselves. Shit hit the fan. Ruby had a temporary hallucination where everything in the facility was suddenly friendly and happy. Red was wishing her a happy birthday, etc. Then Ruby nearly died when the bird zombie attacked. Tom beat the thing to death to save her but lost an arm. The Anon sighed. Shit, so I did miss one. Last thing I saw was Red dead. Fucking Christ, I thought Red was scary as a tangible being. Death has only made him stronger. Seeing him possess the dummy and turn into a fucking toothy monster was brick shitting. I had trouble sleeping. But by this point, people were wondering why this alleged session wasn't archived anywhere. One Anon made an astute observation. Bro tip: Anonymous has access to image editing software and is capable of rudimentary deceit. Quickly, Anons realized that they were being hoodwinked, but the troll wouldn't let up. Kind of hard to fake something like this, they boasted, flashing a panel of Red possessing a dummy. But eventually, the real Weaver entered the thread to clarify. There was no Ruby story thread last night. Y'all are being trolled. The thread quickly turns back into your average Ruby discussion. There's just one problem. The troll was right about one thing. It is hard to fake these drawings. Weaver's art isn't that complicated, but the resemblance to his style was uncanny. It's almost like... They fell for it again. They fucking fell for it again. Plus 100 internets to those who figured it out. It was Weaver. Although TG didn't realize it, Weaver would later reveal that it was in fact him who drew these images. Here's him admitting it nearly 2 years later on Fur Affinity. Okay, but for realsies, this has to be where the trolling ends, right? Right? In the early morning hours of January 9th, a Rubyquest discussion thread was slowly drifting by when suddenly, "You are John, who was Tom's brother. You are one day in an office. Please suggest an Axtion." Wait, this isn't just some ordinary trolling. It was time for the Rubyquest OVA, John Quest, the single most lore-important thread in Rubyquest history. John receives an email from Ace calling him a very naughty word. This cannot stand, so he completely trashes his office. Shout obscenities into intercom. John becomes rude. Plus 13 obscenity points, minus 4 happy friendship points, plus 6 manly points. John learned litany of curses. One by one, multiple major plot points are revealed to have been John's doing. The mysterious figure behind the mirror in session 2, that was John all along. Ruby's third eye, that's because John used psychic on her. The hound zombie, turns out she was actually a Ruby lookalike named Opal, who became horribly disfigured after a round of delicious John Vor. After falling through the brig, John gets isekai'd into Land of the Lost. Congratulations, you win! Final score: 105 horse points, 44 happy smile points, rabbits eaten 1, water coolers vanquished 1, manliness factor M4. Total points 209 out of 210. Legend has it, TG is still trying to get that last point. But for you guys, plus 100 internet points. As Rubyquest's real plot grew more complex, its fan base grew ever more dedicated. From the offset, Rubyquest was a fan art factory. Unfortunately, for once I'm gonna have to be that asshole who doesn't credit the art I'm showing right now. Considering it was all posted anonymously, I hope you can understand. In turn, it was also a fan theory factory. At first, these theories were spread on discussion threads and the IRC, but on January 3rd, a page was added to the TG spin-off wiki 1D4chan for the specific purpose of cataloging Rubyquest theories. Rubyquest was generally well liked on TG. There were some people who accused it of being too railroaded, and just as many who claimed that an interactive story of its nature didn't belong on TG. However, by the time its 9th and final session concluded on February 3rd, 2009, Rubyquest had cemented itself as a 4chan legend. More stories of its ilk would pop up on TG, chief among them being the extremely popular Dwarf Quest written by Gnome, which was openly inspired by Ruby. Does Rubyquest belong on TG? Well, if the answer is yes, then surely Maid Quest is acceptable too. Or how about Joan Adventure? Flip the B and call it Rudy Quest? You get the point. Rubyquest was perhaps the biggest player in inspiring a wave of interactive stories on 4chan, which would soon be categorized under the moniker of quests. Quests became such a long-standing tradition on TG that, in April of 2016, they were sectioned off into their own board, QST. So, I guess the people who decried Rubyquest for not being TG enough were just 7 years early. Nowadays, quests take many forms. Some contain drawings, but others are text-only. Some are long-spanning, while others are silly one-shots that only take up a single thread. Their one unifying gimmick is their interactivity, and the fact that they take place on the internet. Weaver, for his part, would continue questing on 4chan, largely in the form of jokey Rubyquest spin-offs. Eventually, however, he found the site didn't suit him anymore, so he moved his quests over to another TG spin-off site, tgweaver, later renamed QuestDen. As you may have guessed, the site was all about quests. On October 8th, 2009, Weaver started a new thread on QuestDen titled nanquest. This thread would be the first of many telling the story of Rubyquest's spiritual successor. It generally has less emphasis on puzzle solving in the mechanical sense, instead focusing more on its characters and storytelling while retaining the horror aspect. It would also last much longer than Rubyquest, eventually wrapping up on June 5th, 2015. Nowadays, Weaver is long off of 4chan, living off Patreon dollars as an online artist, largely through pumping out gobs of furry porn, which means Weaver does in fact, finally, appreciate the bunny pussy grind set. Hey, I don't judge. Rubyquest is still beloved even over 15 years after its release, inspiring various fan works even to this day. If you want to know the reason, look no further than you're not telling the full story. Huh? Come on, out with it. Why ever did you ditch the Rubyquest video to begin with? Why so mum all of a sudden? Why the long face? Because it sucked. That's why. The entire thing, front to back, was terrible. I tried to pace it like my HRT video, you know, this chronological retelling of an internet story with added context. But Rubyquest just doesn't work with that format. It was also way too long, over 9,000 goddamn words. I tried to bring back live action for the first time since the anime days, like what you're seeing now. But I didn't know what I was doing with my new camera, so it turned out like shit. I also didn't know what point I was trying to make going into it. So while I told the story accurately, the whole video felt really pointless and vapid. But worst of all, I don't even like Rubyquest that much. I mean, as a webcomic, I commend it more for the effort than the end product. I was more interested in the interactive and meta elements of Rubyquest than the story itself. Hell, the only reason I was able to talk about it in this video was because I eschewed any actual story content. No, you know what the actual worst part of the Rubyquest video was? I hated making it. Genuinely, it was some of the least fun I had doing anything in my entire life, because I hated the video. And you want to know why you hated making that video? Because you've lost your touch, your soul, your passion. You were so much better when you didn't appeal to an algorithm. I know what you're gonna say already. Oh, but I put so much more effort into my videos now. People are flocking to it in droves. The audience loves me so much. Please. You hate your audience, and you're real open about that fact once you're in a private Discord server. Before I got here, these seats were filled with nothing more than cardboard caricatures. You may care a little about disappointing your fans, but really, you think most of them are too stupid to even know when you've screwed up. And for the record, you're right to think that. I mean, most of them talk like they're only 15 years old. But I'm not stupid. I know every mistake you've made. Even the ones you try to convince yourself aren't mistakes. Even the ones you haven't made yet. I'm the ghost of fuck up past, present, and future. You were so close to not listening to me during the Rubyquest debacle. Really, you should be thanking me. But it's just a YouTube video. Yeah, I know. But even if everybody else thinks Unk still got it, I know the truth. And I'll make sure you know it too. What happened since the days of the after-school novelists club? Shouldn't you just be writing books like you always wanted to? Or have the endless hours of watching YouTube rotted your brain too much to manage it? Of course I've still got it. You're proof of that. I'm not leaving that easily. Ah! Thanks once again to boot.dev for sponsoring today's video. Remember, code Crunchybagels, 25% off your first year, link in the description. I'd also like to thank my patrons, including Deck Devil YGO, Funky Boy Haas, Goats, Jerichode, Issy Boy, Cow, KD Pack, Mini, Momo, Neon Manta, and Temper. If you want your name at the end of my videos, be sure to join patreon.com/crunchybagels. The link is also in the description.